We have over 1 billion profiles on LinkedIn. And then what are the skills of the people who are getting hired, who have been hired in the last year? And out of that, we get to see what are the most in-demand skills and what are the skills that actually get you the new jobs. So when we look at that report, we've seen some pretty big changes in the last couple of years.
Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I am curious about AI. And here is a stat that stopped me cold. According to LinkedIn's data, within the next 5 years, 70% of the skills required to do your job will be different from the ones you have now. Same title, same desk, basically a different job. That number comes from today's guest, a man who is at the forefront of all of this research, Dan Roth, the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. Dan oversees editorial for a platform with over 1 billion profiles, which means he has a front row seat to how the global workforce is actually changing. Not how we think it's changing, not how we want it to change, and not the vibes on Twitter, but he has the real data on who's getting hired and what skills are getting them there. And what he is seeing is kind of wild. AI literacy is surging, obviously, you knew that. But so are the deeply human skills like storytelling, conflict resolution, and public speaking. Job postings asking for storytellers have doubled in the last year. So it turns out, in a world where everyone can sound smart by running things through ChatGPT, the people who can actually tell a compelling story are the ones cutting through the noise. As a lifelong writer, journalist, and storyteller, I don't hate this, honestly. So Dan also dropped some genuinely useful tactical advice, how to showcase skills in LinkedIn in a way that actually matters, why traditional resumes are losing ground to live prototyping in interviews, and the single weirdest hack for getting AI adoption to spread inside a company. I won't spoil it, but it involves all hands meetings and a guy named Frank. We also get into agents. Dan's been building his own apps, including a New York commuter tool that I personally want and a podcast clip sharing app that definitely sounds useful. And he also has a smart take on when to let your agents run wild and when to put yourself in the loop. Whether you're a leader trying to build an AI-forward culture or someone navigating what feels like an entirely new career landscape, this episode truly is packed with stuff you can actually use. So with that, please enjoy my conversation with Dan Roth, the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. Dan, welcome to AI Curious.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you. And I understand that I'm one of the few, from one of the few companies. It's maybe the only company that's been on here twice. Is that true?
I think there have been a couple other repeat guests. I don't think there's never been a company of two different executives, right? So it's almost like the Saturday Night Live has the 5 Timers Club, right? With a certain, so we need to get a blazer, like the curious blazer that guests can wear for the repeat appearances. Love it. So, you guys have been very busy. When we spoke to Deepak a few months ago, he talked at length about the AI initiatives LinkedIn has. And one reason I'm so excited to speak to you is you've been doing a ton of research on looking at what skills are more necessary and relevant now than before, what's shifting in a workplace. So whereas Deepak kind of spoke a little more about kind of building agentic solutions, you are deep in the research of actual workplace culture. So would love to jump right into your skills on the rise report. What were some of the biggest insights from that?
Yeah, well, first, I should just explain what this report is. What we are looking at, we know that skills are the currency for how people get ahead in their job. It is increasingly the way that companies are hiring for employees. They're thinking less. We can see this through how they use the recruiter product, how they do searches on LinkedIn, is they're spending less time focused on where someone went to school or what their job title is, because that tells you what someone has done. And what they want to do is hire someone who can do the work that needs to get done. So they're looking for the skills, tell them, what are you able to actually accomplish once we get you in the door? So you're seeing more hiring being done that is starting with, what are the skills that I need for this particular role? And for people who are in the market or want to get promoted, or are thinking about starting their own company, they're increasingly thinking about, what are the skills that I have? What are the skills that I need? So for the skills on the Rise report, the things that we look at are, what are the skills that people are adding to their profiles? We have over a billion profiles on LinkedIn. And then what are the skills of the people who are getting hired, who have been hired in the last year? And out of that, we get to see what are the most in-demand skills and what are the skills that actually get you the new jobs. So when we look at that report, we've seen some pretty big changes in the last couple of years. And the biggest one, no surprise, is AI skills. So if you look at where where demand is really surging, it is around kind of two big buckets of AI skills. The first one are technical AI skills. So these are anything that is involved with helping companies, either large language model companies, build out their expertise and to be able to compete. So these are kind of like hardcore technical skills. The other bucket is skills around helping companies adopt AI across their company. So for that, you're looking at things like data governance and AI for design and AI for business. And the first one, the more technical one, it's things like prompt engineering is probably the most obvious example, but it would be things like model training, OpenAI, APIs, LangChain, like the kind of, understanding how to get deep into the weeds to be able to implement big AI changes. So that's one massive bucket, is what we call AI literacy. And within AI literacy, there's technical AI skills, and then there is skills to be able to deploy AI within a company.
Before we go too much further, I'm curious about a seeming paradox there, in that there's one school of thought in kind of AI nerd circles that technical skill, as AI is getting better at like coding, coders need to code less. And so to some extent, like the people who have spent like years developing and nurturing these like hard technical skills are like, damn, my technical skill is somehow less scarce and coveted because Claude Code or whatever can just do it. But it sounds like also these technical skills are extremely valuable. So is it like different? Is there further nuance there where it's like coding itself less relevant, but having a fluency in how to like actually get under the hood of LLMs is like, how do you think about that on the surface kind of paradox there?
No, that's exactly right. Is there are still technical skills that are very much in demand. What we don't see in terms of skills on the rise are the ones around programming languages as being as dominant as they were. If you would ask me 4 years ago, these would have all been hard skills around learning particular languages. Now it is much more around the idea of how do you train AI to be able to do the actual coding itself. And so you want to be great at understanding how to do evaluations and how to put in evaluation frameworks and how to be able to do things more efficiently with how the AI is being used. And those kind of technical skills are the ones that are now much more in demand than knowing particular coding languages. I'm not saying any of that goes away, but what we're looking at in this report is what is on the rise, and those are the ones that are on the rise. How do you actually scale out AI across a company or across a frontier lab?
Makes total sense. Okay, that's bucket one. What's next?
Yeah. All right. So that's bucket one, putting the AI, being able to actually develop AI or being able to implement AI within a company. The second big bucket is around human skills. This is really interesting because once you get to a world where everyone can build and you can iterate and experiment much faster, there is a bigger need for human skills around things like getting teams aligned, around being able to explain and explore new strategies, to be able to do things like public speaking. We're seeing public speaking emerge as like a skill in demand, conflict mitigation. So there are, within a company, you basically have, we can see from companies that they are increasingly competing with players that they've never had to compete with before. The boundaries around where you compete as a company are evaporating. You're competing with a lot smaller companies. You're competing with people going out on their own and just having Claude Code as their, one employee. You're competing against companies that have never been able to get into these spaces before because it hasn't been efficient for them to do it. And now they can do it because building and testing is so much cheaper than it used to be. So if you're at a company where the walls, the competitive moat is disintegrating.
Mm-hmm.
You want people who are who can adapt quickly, who are agile, and it can bring other people along. So those are kind of the skills on the rise that we're seeing around these human areas. That includes mentorship, cross-functional management, stakeholder communication, and those are not on. They don't stand out on their own. They are paired with these AI adoption ones. So I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying that these human skills are. It's not an either or. It is you kind of have to have both of these. And then the other thing that really jumped out at us is that we have seen a doubling of the amount of job postings asking for storytellers in the last year.
Mm.
You don't typically see that. You don't typically see job postings change that dramatically.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, we tend to sit up and take notice. Why storytelling? You need, again, you're in a world now, everyone sounds smart. You run everything through ChatGPT. Suddenly we all sound like geniuses about it. So you need to be able to tell the story in the right way. ChatGPT will get you to the very base level. Everyone sounds identical. What can you do to be able to cut through the noise, to be able to say something that's unique, to get people to buy in to where things are going? That all requires storytelling. So that turns out to be a very in-demand skill in an AI world. I don't think any of us would have thought that 3 years ago.
I love that. I mean, as a longtime journalist, a storyteller, I'm biased, but I very much appreciate that insight. And as far as Bucket 2, that is completely aligns with my own theories. And I'm not the only one saying this. Of course, there are many out there that as AI gets more and more advanced, eventually the things that will be most in demand from humans is what makes us human. And those are what used to be called, I think it says pejorative, used to be called, quote, soft skills, right? But judgments, empathy, listening, being able to form a real connection with humans. That's the kind of thing that no chatbot or AI agents can really do, at least hopefully not for a long time. So it's cool to see that you're already seeing that in the data. One kind of meta question for you, Dan. What does this mean as skills themselves, as you pointed out up top, are almost like a harder currency or a more real currency employees are seeking as opposed to just experiences or company names or kind of what used to be the most impressive thing, titles and companies. What is the implication for that? Does that mean that the company or title or years in a job are less important than they used to be? Do you have any sense of how hirers are recalibrating and de-emphasizing certain things, or are they saying we need all the things, do it all?
No, something has to give. And one of the most interesting changes that is happening in hiring to me is companies who are asking people to not just send in their resume or their profile and a cover letter, because in an AI world, all of that sounds perfect. I mean, all of it, if you can write anything, it's going to sound great.
Yeah.
So what companies are doing is they're trying to find a way to be able to say, is this person actually good at what they say they're good at? How do I test it out? And they're doing it through prototyping. They're asking, we keep hearing these, and at this point, it's still anecdotal. I want to get the data on this, but we're hearing these anecdotes about companies saying, we bring in a prospective employee and we're saying, how would you build this? How would you solve this? Take us in real time through building something. And the goal is not to have a great completed project at the end. It's to understand how the person thinks and to see if they can use the tools that they say that they are skilled up on. And so in a world like that, you have to be able to, your title doesn't matter. As a prospective employer, if I bring you in to interview for a role, I don't care what your title is. I care that you can actually do the work that I'm asking you to do. So that is why the skills matter more than the title or the school, for sure the school. The other part of this is we know based on our data that the skills that are required to do a job are changing faster than they've ever accelerated before. So according to our data, something like within the next 5 years, 70% of the skills that are required to do your job are going to be different than the ones that you had before. That's essentially like being asked to do a different job than you were hired for. Exact same title, but totally different skill set. So you have to be a continuous learner in that kind of a world. That means always investing in new skills. And the difference between your title might not change at all. You might join an employer and you might have the same title the entire arc of your time with that employer. It might change every 3 years, but your skills need to change every 3 months, every 6 months. Companies are asking for these continuous learners, this sort of growth mindset, this learn it all mindset, as Satya Nadella says, is you have to be someone that is saying, I'm willing to invest in myself. I'm willing to invest in these new tools, in these new ideas, and I can showcase that I have these skills. And so that's one of the big differences in a skills first world is it's changing so frequently. And employers' needs change so frequently that they're going to try to do this matching of the skills in real time. And that's what I think if you are changing jobs, you're thinking that you might want to change jobs in a couple of years. If you're thinking you just want to get, promoted, like you have to be adding new skills all the time.
That makes total sense. One thing I'm curious about from a very kind of boring, almost mechanical perspective, I'm guessing that it's not as simple as just saying, I am going to add the skill LLM deployments. Therefore, I'm an expert that will get hired. Right? And I know savvy LinkedIn users are aware of skills, but can you share a little more about how they're weighted and how the algorithm ensures I can't be just like a silly podcast host and then dump 20 super hard technical skills and now I have my skills. Like, what are the checks and balances and how do you ensure it's vetted in any reasonable way?
Yeah. So some of this comes from in your profile, we are looking at not just explicit skills, not just things that you are listing that you have, but implicit skills. So these are when you describe what your job is. And this is why when you're working on your profile, you want to be more almost a storyteller. You need to say, I did using Google Analytics, I was able to change this, see this kind of increase in ad performance at my company. And out of that, we are saying, I got it, Google Analytics, this person is in, and might do deeper inferring of what your skills are based on how you explain what you've done and what you've accomplished. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that what employers do when they go to hire someone is they look at what what people are posting, and they want to see that you have, if you're technical, that you've written papers, that you've got that your repo is fully up to date and you're doing all kinds of really interesting projects. But the other part is you need to be posting about what you're working on. So for you, if you're a podcast host, you want to be able to say, hey, when I'm working in Riverside, this is what I've discovered about what works and what doesn't work. Here's what I'm testing out, or I use Claude Code to be able to build this new way of writing all of my descriptions for all of my episodes. And what are you experiencing? And you want to show that you are in your LinkedIn posting. Ideally, you are showcasing your skills, not through saying, hey, I just, have these 10 skills, but instead you're saying, here's what I've learned, or this is what works for me, or what's worked for you. How are you doing this? And that's a really good way to be able to demonstrate not just that you have the skills, but that you use the skills, and even more importantly, that you are curious and a learner around these skills. Because again, the employer is trying to hire you for something that you say you have, but what they really want to see is that you're going to keep adding new skills. It is not, you don't get hired just for a point in time. If you're a contractor and someone is saying, I'm just going to hire this outside company, yes, point in time, I need you to go do one thing for me. But if you are hiring someone to come on to payroll and to be with you for years, you want to know that they are going to change with the organization and they're going to help the organization change. And for that, you want to show that you're curious, that you're investing in yourself, that you're developing new skills, that you can explain what you know and how you know it. All of that kind of goes back to the storytelling conversation. All of that storytelling is as essential as saying that you have those skills.
As the host of the podcast, AI Curious, I heartily endorse that overall channeling of curiosity and showing your willingness to evolve and change. That's fantastic. Dan, how are you seeing this, if at all, playing out by industry or vertical? Are there any industries where you're seeing a massive change and some that you're like not much at all? Or is it kind of across the board? You're seeing all these shifts?
I mean, we can look at it by industry and see which of the industries where we're seeing the most demand for AI literacy, which again is the sort of bucket we use to talk about all these AI skills. And it's like marketing, media, technology are all exactly at the top places where AI can start taking over parts of people's jobs pretty quickly. In those cases, employers really want to be able to see that you're using AI to be able to take the drudgery off your plate, move it over to AI, or to do things faster at scale, and then you can invest in the skills that the AI can't do. To use your term earlier, like what are the human skills that you have? How are you using those things and moving more of the less human stuff over to the AI? There are other areas where we're seeing very little AI usage and very little AI demand. Not saying that there's none, but areas like dentistry, oil field workers, for therapists, like these kind of human to human roles or out in the real world type roles, there is less need for AI skills. If you're a plumber, you probably want to use AI somehow to be able to do your invoicing and maybe look up things. But for the most part, you have to just be a really great plumber, and you've got to be really good at being able to do plumbing things. That does not require AI. But if you're in any area, and you're seeing this happen pretty quickly, consulting, banking, anywhere where AI can take over part of the stack, it is taking over part of the stack.
Yeah. I think you carefully used the phrase taking over, where AI could take, and then many people hear that and they fear something else coming in that sentence. And the fear is take your job, right? But you said instead take your stack. So let's go there now. There's a cliche out there, and anyone who's in the AI space for a while has heard this, that AI won't take your job, but a person who uses AI will take your job. What is your how true, to what level of truth is there in that cliche? And then just more generally, how are you thinking about this? And I know it's a very complicated question and answer of quote, AI taking jobs.
It's a great question.
What data are you seeing, or what from your, you have a very unique perspective on this, and you have a lot more visibility and insight than 99.9% of the planet does on this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So AI, just to be clear, AI will change everything that we do, but we are not seeing in the data right now that AI is taking jobs. It is taking parts of jobs. And that cliche that you mentioned is true. People that are using AI to be able to do their jobs better are the people that is what you are competing against. And the great part about that is that there are no barriers to being able to use AI to do parts of your job. It is not like people who are using AI to do parts of the job have some superpower or deep STEM, technical abilities. AI, this is the first technical revolution that we've had that has been open to everybody. The AI teaches you how to use the AI. That is a really big difference. And so the most important thing, and it is in the title of your podcast, is to be curious. And it is to be, or I just interviewed Bill Gurley a couple weeks ago, who wrote a new book about careers and about how to have great careers in an age of AI. And he used this term that I think is absolutely dead on, which is you need to be fascinated. You need to be fascinated about your body of work. You need to be, and he calls it the Netflix test, which is when you come home after a hard day, would you rather spend more time learning about this area, the area that you are spending your days in, than watching a show on Netflix? And you need to be that fascinated. You have to pass that Netflix test. And if you pass the Netflix test, what you're going to spend your time on is thinking, how can I use AI as a superpower, as jet fuel, as some way to be able to get ahead, because I care so passionately about this area that I spend all my working days, working on. And that's really the key here, I think, is to make sure that you feel you're in an area, you want to be in an area where you're using AI because you want to be able to do more. Like you just love what you do and you want to do more of it, and the AI can help there.
I love that energy. And I think that anyone who's even tuning into an AI podcast as a self-selecting group, they're already starting that journey, right? So to you listeners, like, thank you, well done. You've done it. You're on your way. But more seriously, there is I agree with you, and I totally agree. And when I give AI workshops and talk to companies, I make a point. It's the first tool in history where you can say, "Hello, how do I use AI better?" Right? You couldn't ask I couldn't be holding up this pen. A pen. How do I use a pen? It doesn't make sense. Right? It's the first time I could ever do this. It's incredible. That said, there are, despite once you start it, I agree, it can be frictionless and super fun. There are still millions and millions, arguably hundreds of millions of people that do need some kind of reskilling, some education, right? How are you thinking, not that it's your job to retrain and educate the entire global workforce, but how are you thinking that as a society we'll kind of crack that problem of, even if people do their best to kind of be AI curious and evolve, and instead of watching Netflix to spend some time in Claude Code, like what needs to happen for there to not be some massive job disruption? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah. First, it is kind of our job. And we think about, we're a mission-driven company, and people who work here buy into the mission. The mission is to make sure that we're connecting every member of the economic workforce with economic opportunity. We want to see people get ahead. That is the whole idea. That is what LinkedIn is set up to do. That's how we talk about ourselves, is what our role in the world is to make sure that people are connecting to economic opportunity, whatever that means to them. If people are going to get those kind of opportunities, we need to make it as easy as possible to not be scared by AI, to be able to see that this is available to you, to realize that there are courses that you can take. So as an example, we have with LinkedIn Learning, we have a number of courses and learning paths that are available for free that you can go and start getting started with AI. There are untold number of courses available on YouTube to be able to do this. I think schools have to really, schools for a long time have said, some schools had to take a, no AI rule. I totally understand that. But you also have to make sure that people understand when AI is actually useful. You want to learn the basics, but you also have to know when to use AI. And years ago, right when ChatGPT came out, I was speaking. I was a guest at Susie Welch's class at NYU. Susie Welch is a professor at NYU, teaches the most in-demand class there on learning your values and understanding what you want to kind of do with your career. And she had asked the class to do presentations on different industries. And people got up and they gave their presentations. And she said to one of the groups, she said, "Did you use AI to make that presentation?" And they looked sheepishly around and they were like, "Yeah, we did." And she was like, "Great. You should be using AI to do this. You should use it in places where AI can actually be helpful. Bring the idea. You have to bring your own ideas, and you've got to figure out how to separate yourself from the crowd, but you should be using AI in those cases." And I think there is a role. So in every level of education is helping people understand that AI plays a role and that you can't run away from it or stick your head in the sand. That's really critical. I think employers need to make tools available to people. You have to make sure that you can't just shut down. And I've talked to companies before and employees before who say "Oh, we're not allowed to use AI at my job." To me, that's crazy. You are handicapping your company by doing that. You have to give people those tools. And then you have to make it easy for them to play with them. These are tools that are kind of playful. You start asking really naive questions and you do dumb stuff and you make real fun little apps or whatever. And then you learn how to be able to use it for the stuff that matters. So I think there's a role that companies need to play there. And then I would say, if you are listening to this podcast and you are one of the AI curious, I think that you have a role to be able to help other people understand what it takes to be able to start using some of these tools and to get comfortable doing it. So last night I was talking to my mom as an example, who was actually she uses AI all the time, but she was working on a particular project for her job. And I said, "Why aren't you feeding all of this into Claude? This is you're spending a lot of time on something that AI can do." And she's like, "Well, only I would know this. This is an area where I'm an expert." And I was like, "Yes, you are the expert, but it can save you a ton of time, and you can have it ask you back questions that you might not have thought of, or that a non-expert might wonder about what you're working on." And so I would just say, if you're already deep into this world, start pressing people, start encouraging them to do it. And you're going to sound a little bit like a psycho, and I feel that way sometimes. I'm at parties and I'm like, "You could use AI for this, and you could use AI for that." And I think you got to get comfortable in it, because that is how we're going to make sure that the most number of people actually make it over this hump and are using it to do the things that are important to them.
Really nicely said. I'd love for a moment, Dan, to get your thoughts on AI agents. That has been, I feel like that was the hottest topic. Even as in 2025, there are many, including me, who are like, oh, this is the year of AI agents. And that was mostly kind of theory and talk and like early pilot experimentation. Flash forward only several months, and at the bleeding edge, you have folks who are using like OpenClaw to do all kinds of crazy experiments. You have, I'm personally building all kinds of tools and agentic systems that are blowing my mind that I'm able to build wearing pajamas on a Saturday morning, right? As a non-technical person. And I think companies are starting to truly inject agentic solutions in their workflows. But there's a pet theory of mine though. It's a very different pace throughout the industry. There are some companies who are like, okay, we know it's out there. We don't know where to start. There are some who are deep in experimentation. There are some like AI nerds who are like really deep into it, but probably most people are probably not, right? What are you seeing though? So that's just my personal speculation and kind of what I'm seeing online. You actually have insight to what's actually happening. What are you seeing as far as to what extent AI agents are either already in the workforce, or whether employers are seeking skills there, or what's your sense of where we're at right now as far as agents in particular?
I mean, this is not slowing down. The agentic, the rise of agents is just going to continue. You know, I think you just had Mark Zuckerberg say that he's going to create an agent to help him be a CEO.
Yep,
that's a pretty big statement about embracing agents. Don't expect any of this.
Will that agent go to the congressional testimonies? I'm wondering if, Mark couldn't make it, but here's...
That's a good call. You know, we talk about unloading the stuff you don't want to do on your agent.
Drudgery.
That's
the drudgery. I don't want to do that stuff. You can talk to senators.
I would say that just continues. The only advice I would have for people who are getting involved with agents is think about what you are using AI for. So if you are running, I'll give you my own examples, is I will frequently have a number of agents working on a number of problems that I'm trying to solve. But if I'm trying to learn, I usually will inject friction between the agents so that I can actually understand what's going on. So I have a number of apps that I've built. One is a New York City commuting app that tells you like in real time where the trains are and whether you need to run to the train station or whether you can walk there. And while building this, I run this kind of 2-agent system in Terminal where I have one agent that's the building agent and one agent that's like a review agent that is looking for security concerns or violating like certain rules that I've set up. And I could just have the 2 agents talk to each other and sort things out. But I put myself in the middle there. So I have one agent that's the builder agent. The builder agent submits a list of changes it wants to make to me. I then give that to the review agent. And the review agent tells me what it agrees with or doesn't agree with or what needs to change. And then I have to go back to the builder agent. I don't need to be, I'm the dumbest person in this mix. But I put myself in the middle because I want to understand what's going on there. And sometimes I'll catch things because I'm like, no, for instance, this happened yesterday where the review agent was like, this is, you need to change this whole area because Android won't be able to handle X, Y, or Z. But my app is iOS only. I'm like, this is worthless. There is no reason to go and inject this complexity here. But more often it is understanding what it's catching so that I can learn about things like, password handling or API key handling or building in different ways so that I can understand what the code actually does. So for me, staying between my agents is an important role for why I'm actually using these tools in the first place, which is to build the skills. But it is good in other cases, I just let the agents go crazy. Now, I have had problems where the agents have done things that totally break what I've been building. I had one issue where an entire branch, like I couldn't merge it back with my main branch because the agents had gotten the branches too far apart. And so I'm constantly learning where the agentic idea breaks, at least for me. And I think it's just important to realize these things are not foolproof.
Totally. And by the way, that is a great example of learning by doing, even if this app never, also, I will happily pay whatever you're charging for this commuter app. Yes, please. And I'm sure we have many listeners. So
check it out.
Let us know.
Commutely on iOS. COMMUTELY.
Amazing. I love it. So I actually, since I know as we're wrapping up here, any other apps you want to share? What other kind of like app mischief have you been up to? Other kind of vibe coding? What else are you building?
Yeah.
I love
I've got
this.
another app in the App Store called Audio 2, which I'm going to rename because it turns out that was a terrible name for an app. And that basically takes a podcast. I'm a podcast obsessive. Is very hard to share. There's so much incredible wisdom in podcasts, so much great knowledge, and we don't see it getting shared at the rate that I think it should be getting shared at. It is hard to share podcast clips. So I made an app that makes it easier to share podcast clips. You go and you say the starting point, you say the ending point. That time clip gets sent to a server I run. It then gets spit back out to you as a video with captions baked into it so that you can then share it on LinkedIn or texting or wherever else you want to share it. So That's a fun app that I built to solve. Like in both of these cases, I am solving a problem that I have.
Yeah.
So I am the only market for this.
What's it called?
It's called Audio 2. AUDIO number 2. Yeah.
Oh, no, okay. There's a new name. Okay. So the current name is Audio 2 but you might rename it something like Audio 3 in the future. So.
Exactly. I'm thinking great podcast clip app. So just going super generic with it.
I love it. Dan, you've already shared so much advice and kind of nuggets of wisdom for anyone involved in points of their career, but would love to kind of like have you as we last question or two.
Yeah.
For both a two-parter. What's the most important thing if you're a leader in a company and you want to instill the right kind of AI culture and adopt AI effectively? What advice would you have? And then conversely, for anyone who is trying to navigate this strange new AI injected career landscape, advice for navigating this. Again, I recognize you already gave us plenty of good thoughts, but if you had to distill a couple of ideas.
No, I love these questions. And I think your first one is a really super important one. You can see in companies that I've talked to a lot of CEOs and C-suite executives who complained about this. They want to see more AI usage within their companies. They are not seeing people adopt it at the rate they thought they would. And so a lot of times I'll ask, like, where it works, where does it work? And the most interesting, I found this fascinating. There is no technical answer for how you get AI adoption within your company. What almost every executive has told me is that they see adoption pick up when they mention how someone has used AI at an all hands. They mention how someone at the company is using AI. So you have these executives that say, like, when I stand up in front of my company and I say, I was blown away that, Frank in accounting used AI to be able to build this new expense tracker. And he did it within a week and just used these tools and, congrats to Frank. And then this executive says, like, after I do something like that, I get all of these emails from people within the company saying, I built something like that. I built something like that. And you get middle managers who are saying, oh, that's what the CEO cares about. I'm also going to start doing these things because I want to be able to be mentioned at an all hands. So somehow this like mention at all hands is like one of the secrets to getting AI diffusion within your company. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So you need to make the tools available, obviously, but you really need to build a culture where you're saying this is important. You just need to flat out say this is important and I'm going to celebrate it. And you need to tell your managers that they have to celebrate it too. Like at staff meetings, ask people, what are you building? How are you doing that? So on my team, we have a number of ways of doing that. We've got Slack and Teams channels that we run where people talk about what they're building and they share it out. They're expected to share it out. And we just try to have a culture where building is celebrated and sharing what you're building is celebrated even more and people learn from each other. I would say have hack days, no matter what industry you're in, try to have hack days. There are companies that can come and help you run these things. Just do this sort of thing to embrace a kind of hacking AI culture. Super important. And then your second question was,
flipping around for someone who's looking to navigate their career and maybe even to, if you will, AI-proof their career and figure out how to survive and thrive in this new landscape. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, I was really taken by Bill. I'm going to just steal Bill Gurley's advice. Bill Gurley, very famous venture capitalist. I really thought what he had to say was just dead on, which is you got to find something you care about. Like you have to, things are moving and changing so fast. And the pace of learning that is required to keep up is just accelerating. In a world like that, you need to have fascination. You need to find an area that you are passionate about. And people, all kinds of people at college commencements will get up and say, chase your passion. And, that is it's advice that's almost impossible to act on, but you need to at least find something in your job or at your company that you are passionate about. That's like where it starts. And or maybe passion is the wrong word. You have to be fascinated by it. You have to just want to learn more. And if you want to learn more, you're going to invest the time to be able to use AI to be able to learn as much as you can and to be able to get ahead. And that's kind of as simple as it is. If you are fascinated by an area, you're going to invest in the AI tools that will help you become even better in that area. Because if you're competitive, you want to be number one, or you're just curious, you cannot learn enough. Like that is what's required to be able to have an AI-proof career, I think. And then the other thing I would say is like careers are, you can start companies now in a way that was impossible before, because before you had to have all of these skills. You don't have to have the skills anymore to be able to write a business plan. You don't need to know somebody that can tell you how to get a loan. Like AI can do all of that. It can't give you a loan, but it can tell you how to make yourself most approachable by a banker, be able to sell yourself best to somebody, an investor. And those are open to you. So I would say like being an entrepreneur is now a path that people who hadn't thought about it before should start thinking about it, because AI can make it happen for you. So that would be my advice.
I love the full circle. We started this conversation with the importance of showcasing skills to employers and ended on, for your own business, is that increasingly AI can help you develop new skills quickly. So great full circle. Dan, thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. Really appreciate all that you shared. Thanks so much again. And we'll get you that blazer. The second time podcast guest. Was it a yellow or green? I forget what color blazer for SNL. We'll make sure we get a good AI Curious
have
blazer.
Your own,
you guys.
Jeff, have your own color.
You're right. We got to own it. Robe. Oh, it's way better. Robe. Done. Amazing. Thanks again, Dan. Take care.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Dan Roth, the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. And thank you to Jasper Chua, our show's producer and sound engineer and video extraordinaire. Thank you to you, dear listener. If this is your first time at AI Curious, please rate it 5 stars, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks again, and see you next time.